Hi, I'm Stathis, your host. Before we jump in this episode, let me introduce DevRelX. DevRelX is a hub for developer marketing and DevRel professionals. Stay home while DevRelX brings you rich content to boost your DevRel game. Access developer population insights, news, job openings, and more. Discover how to empower developers and grow communities at devrelx.com. Today's episode will start with a quote from our guest.
A community is essentially just a group of individuals, people who help each other out. That's it. There's no magical formula for it, except you got to care about the people in the community. You're not a community just because you all love a brand or because you all use a product. It doesn't make you a community. If you don't help each other, you're not a community. So our tech events, our tech socials, we build true, real communities where people support and help each other out so that we can all do better.
Welcome to Under the Hood of Developer Marketing, a podcast from Slashdata. I'm Jo Stitchbury, one of the senior analysts in the team, and today I'm joined by Shaharris from HackerNest. We've not met before, so please could you introduce yourself to me and the listeners?
Hi, I'm the CEO and founder of HackerNest. We're a little nonprofit organization that builds technology communities around the world. At our heyday peak, we were in 32 cities, 14 countries, 5 continents, and we've run events in 60 cities around the world. We've done big innovation hackathons with companies like partners like Facebook, Airbnb, British government, Canadian government, US government. The last stitch of Stitchbury of hackathons that we did was with the US Department of State. We did the Fish Hackathon, and that was in 35 cities in February of 2018, at which point we realized, wow, hackathons don't have a ton going for them. And despite all of the effort and time and work that we've put into trying to make them fair and useful and innovative, we haven't done great. The effort to output ratio is way off the charts.
Okay, so we're going to come on to the theory of hackathons in a bit, but before we get there, let's talk a little bit more about sort of careers and where you've come from. First of all, I guess I should introduce myself a bit
Please.
to you and also to the listeners. So I was an early mobile developer back in the days of Symbian. And I've also worked in the mobile phone industry for a number of years for Nokia and Sony Ericsson. I moved later into publishing and technical writing when I realised just how difficult it was to find good explanations of some difficult subjects. And since then, I've worked with a number of teams in developer marketing. As a writer and a product manager, I've designed developer portals and created a ton of content for developers. Right now, I'm working with Slashdata as a senior analyst. And I recently edited our multi-author book on developer marketing. So I guess while I'm on the subject of Slashdata, I should mention our upcoming developer economics survey. If you're listening and you're a developer, we'd love to hear your opinion on a range of topics relating to development and your experience. If you complete the survey, there's a chance to win some amazing prizes, and you get to find out the views of your fellow developers in a free report later in the year. There's a link in the description of this podcast for you to find the survey, or you can visit survey.developereconomics.com. So, back to you. Now, Shaharris, I'm going to ask you a little bit about HackerNest. You're not HackerNoon, you're not Hacker News. Where are you based?
We are in Toronto. That's the headquarters for now. But as an organization that runs remote events all around the world, technically we're based everywhere. We're coming for you.
Yes. And how long have you been doing that?
Since dinosaurs roamed the earth and I had hair. That was what, 8 years ago? 8 years.
Right. Wow. I see. And you've been in your current role for 8 years, or have you done other things?
It's primarily been HackerNest and some consulting work on the side. I've done, that's basically sustained us. Our nonprofit is particularly not profitable because I'm a terrible business person. It's like I choose to lose money because that's my secret skill.
So when you were a kid and you were kind of working out what you wanted to do as a career, was losing money in a non-profit part of your big game plan?
Actually,
or did you do something else?
sort of. Actually, I mean, I always kind of wanted to save the world, and I think HackerNest is a pretty good permutation of what can be done to try doing that. I mean, I worked in a lot of different fields. I used to work for the United Nations Development Program on HIV and AIDS. I worked at a private equity firm. We bought and sold chocolate factories in Southeast Asia. It was really random. And I remember once we were, my most enduring memory is we had this 16-pound block of chocolate, and we were going through immigration in Singapore, going back into Malaysia. And the immigration officer was like, "What's this? It looks like drugs." And I'm like, "No, it's chocolate." And they're like, "Well, if it's chocolate, we're gonna have to tax a chunk of your chocolate." And they snipped off a good third of it and kept it. And that's my memory of private equity, guys. Good stuff, real fun. I worked in advertising with DDB. I did all kinds of, not lying, but bending of the truth, writing ads for companies and whatnot. I got to brand the city, which is pretty cool. And let's see what else. I was a project manager for a software development firm. We built online loan financing software. And I ran 3 startups into the ground. I did a co-working space. I've done everything that you can imagine that won't kill you. Yeah.
So when you were taking your chocolate through customs in Singapore, did you ever think that you'd kind of end up here running a non-profit that was all about getting developers together to build communities?
I sort of did. I mean, so the whole theory behind HackerNest and the purpose is to connect everybody so that we can build a better future together, right? Like 2 heads are better than 1, and it's really difficult to do great things alone. Right. I mean, how many solo founders still exist? No, they come up with the idea, but without an army backing them, a massive company, they can't influence and inflect change on the world at a level that can really, really make a difference, right? Like all the biggest companies in the world have huge impact.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I see what you're saying. Developers are, well, as we've discussed in some of our other podcasts, which you or may not have heard, and the same in the book, we say that developers are a kind of tough audience because they're pretty cynical about marketing, and they're cynical about messages that are coming from people that perhaps don't have their background. I think, quite a few maybe possibly a bit arrogant, or maybe they just feel that their experience is hard won from hours sitting in front of an ID debugging the same thing, although it sounds like you've had that experience too. So I guess from that point of view, you do have something in common. But
I have lots of things in common with developers, and that's mostly the understanding of the world. I think that the negative stereotypes pushed against developers are fairly ill-founded and actually just that, stereotypes, right? Like, developers are pretty chill people. Yes, some of them really, really love their code and really love the exact way that they do it. Sure, there's some developers who have incredibly stubborn points of view, but that's the case with anyone, anywhere, in any sort of profession, right? I just think that it's been highlighted in developers because they're not necessarily... Developers interact more with computers and machines than they do with people, right? Like that's the nature of the job. So social skills might not be as polished as somebody who interacts all day, all the time with other individuals, like if you're in customer support or tech support even. So yeah, I think that the jadedness and the cynicism against things like HR and marketing and whatnot are mostly because people have tried to take advantage of developers all the damn time. If you go to an event, a tech event, right? The conversation is usually, "Oh, hey, you're a developer? Fantastic. I've got this great startup idea. If you build it for me, get me users, develop all the code, give me some content, I will give you 3% of this company. It is a deal. You should work for me." Right? Like they get that all the time. That sucks, right? People look at them, they stereotype them, and don't actually ever get to know them. So the events that we run, these tech socials that bring together developers, we encourage people to drop the image, to drop that perfectness that they need to have in the corporate world all the damn time, right? Like, in front of a room of 500 people on a microphone, I will say the word, and it's not because I'm rude. It's because it's a tactic. It's a tool. When I use profanity in front of so many people, it does three things. First, people start listening because they're like, "Oh, did he actually just say that in front of 500 people? Okay, sure, idiot." Second, they're like, "Well, he's probably not trying to sell me anything because nobody would be stupid enough to use profanity in front of such a large group of people if they were." So they start trusting the things that I have to say more. And the third thing is, for my events, it lets people know that it's okay to do it themselves, right? Like, I want you to come here. I want you to nerd out with a bunch of other people. I want you to really communicate. I want you to build trusted relationships at the event, because the community is what guides the community. There is no overarching body that unites and brings together the tech industry. You have, dentistry and medical associations and these sorts of organizations provide the overarching impetus or guidance for that community, but there's no such thing for tech because we're so disparate, we're so disjointed, we're all over the place. There's so many of us, but no unifying factor. HackerNest hopes to correct and fix that, right? By establishing and developing communities of developers, we're able to create standards and expectations of ourselves and others that we can hold each other to. We can guide towards good outcomes. We can advise towards things that people should do and avoid the toxic and the wrong and the bad, right? Like, Anonymous exists, and that's sort of a developer overarching conscience in a vigilante sense of the word. But we're not exactly that. But like, it's good to have a place, a group of people that you can rely on, that you can turn to when you're spending your time building the future, as it were, because developers build stuff, right? Like, we build things to save people from boredom. We build things to save lives. We build, medical instruments and devices and technologies to help people walk again. We build stuff that's supposed to save you time, money, effort. We're essentially building stuff to save the world. This is a lot to put on anybody's shoulders, and it's hard to do it alone. So the tech socials, we connect people so you can support each other. And in this way, I feel that developers can get to know each other in a more visceral level, in a truer level, in a more, I hate this word, authentic way that doesn't just expose them as, oh, you're a neckbeard who hates people and interacts with a screen and will talk nerd to me, right? Like, that's... Sorry, I kind of went on a tangent there.
No, that's really good. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I like you, I dislike the word authentic, and I'm just wondering, I particularly dislike the kind of community and community ethos that is sometimes foisted on developers by corporates that want to build a community. So, you'll have a contributor agreement, that's fair enough, but then sometimes I feel like communities are being defined by the wrong people. The people that want the community to succeed because they've got something to sell are the ones that are saying, this is how you're going to be. You're going to be playful. You're going to have these colors. You're going to like these characters, rather than saying to developers, who are you?
I see. So what you're saying is that a lot of communities intend to foster and push an identity onto developers as to how they should be, or communities in general, right? Like, if you're a part of the world-saving community, you should give up all of your worldly possessions, meditate 3 times a day, et cetera, et cetera. So I disagree with a lot of that. HackerNest, sure, we have an identity, and that identity is practicality, honesty, and directness. But that's sort of just our way of being, as opposed to what we're telling people to be. A community is essentially just a group of individuals, people who help each other out. That's it. There's no magical formula for it, except you got to care about the people in the community. You're not a community just because you all love a brand or because you all use a product. It doesn't make you a community. If you don't help each other, you're not a community. So our tech events, our tech socials, we build true, real communities where people support and help each other out so that we can all do better.
Yep, that sounds great. So tell us about some of your communities. Where are they? What are they doing? And who are they?
We've been in a bit of a sort of revamp mode for the past year. We grew way too quickly. We ended up like exploding into 32 cities, and we didn't have very good infrastructure, and it ended up being that pretty much anything that happened in any given city had to come back through headquarters. And us being just this, again, tiny nonprofit that didn't have a ton of experience building nonprofits, we didn't scale. So we sort of crumpled under our own weight. And we actually not shut down, we put on hiatus 2/3 of our cities in the last year, and have been revamping everything from scratch, rebuilding stuff. The people need to be more central in our execution of our mission. And that mission is to connect people. Yeah.
I see.
Did that answer your question in the least? Because I'm not even sure.
It didn't tell us where you were or who they were, but it led on actually to another of my questions, which was, have you made mistakes, and what was your biggest challenge, and what did you learn from it? And it sounds to me like you've kind of answered that, but perhaps you could expand a bit on how you detected that you hit a problem and decided that you had to go on hiatus.
HackerNest is supposed to be headless. HackerNest is not supposed to be about HackerNest. It's supposed to be about the people who are actually physically at the tech social connecting with each other. And what we ended up being was like a central organizing factor in all of these different cities. But that doesn't make sense. You should be organizing. You should be running your city. You know it better than I do. Why am I helping you pick a venue? That doesn't make sense. Why am I telling you how the flavor or identity of your community should be? That's not what we do. So instead, we have this very simple structure and formula of, here's what you can do to run an event that brings people together, where everyone can communicate freely. Even if you're super introverted, it's so easy to communicate at our events. They're incredibly loud, not because we play music, because honestly, music does not help conversation, but because everyone's interacting with everyone. How do we do that, right? Like that's the sort of it's something that took 8 years to craft. These tactics that we have, and it's everything from even just handwriting name tags. We had 500, 600 people coming out to our events, and we would still handwrite every single name tag. Most other, institutions, event runners, producers, they'd just be like, well, that's dumb. What you should do is really, you need to print out all these name tags. You need to put them on a table. And then people come and they take their name tag, put it on themselves, and they walk in, no lines. But that doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you want to see lines? That photograph's really great. It's fantastic marketing for the event. But also, we handwrite each name tag. We smile. We write your name. We give that to you, and you say thank you. You have a positive social interaction with us before you even enter my event. And that, for an introvert, that for a developer, can make a whole world of difference. So there's hundreds of little tweaks, of little things like that we do to make sure that the environment that we've created is one that's conducive to real, true connections. I hate saying the word connections. I hate saying the word authentic. I hate saying the word synergy so much, and I'm so angst-ridden.
Yes. Well, my favourites are leverage and utilize, actually, but synergy is definitely up there. Yeah. So coming back to your, those little tweaks, I think that's a really interesting point, and I'm kind of minded of the British cycling team for, I think it was the recent Olympics. I'm not sure which one it was, actually. Maybe it was London 2012, where they decided that they would look at all the tiny little things that they could do to help their athletes, from improving their sleep by getting them the kind of pillows they liked, to looking into the fabrics of, the clothes that they were wearing and finding the most comfortable. It's things that you wouldn't necessarily think of, but just that tiny adjustment, the Kaizen, I guess, that you'd have in Japan, where you're constantly refining your process, seems to really contribute to, the sum being greater than the parts. I want to go back to your point about lines, actually, because I was at an event in London this week, and it was raining because it's London and it's June, and most of the event was outside, and so all the lines and the line for registration, it was misery. We were stood in the rain. The line was very long just to get our name tag, and they were printing them, but I don't know, for some reason they were printing them really slowly. So in that case, the marketing wasn't great, because people were taking pictures of the lines, and bedraggled conference delegates standing there looking really pissed off and tweeting that this is no good, the organisation's poor, why can't you organise your registration better? So you can do that in a sunny country, and I guess you're in Canada, aren't you? So maybe everything's
Our events aren't outdoors. Our tech socials are inside. No
well,
one
I think this is
standing
it,
in the rain.
Yeah, don't put developers outside. Developers don't do outside. I think that's probably what we can take from that.
It's not necessarily true. I mean, we had a barbecue outdoors once, and we ended up having like 75 people show up. This was one of the very first events that we did, and it was great. It was fantastic. A lot of hot dogs. But I feel like when I say lines are good to photograph and whatnot, I mean that the process, it is worth standing in line to create that interaction of positivity, of smile, here is your name tag, enjoy, have fun inside, is this your first time? That sort of communication and whatnot, it chills people out. It's relaxed. I think it's worth waiting in line for 30 seconds in order to have that. So I think it's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I agree. I think that does make a lot of sense. And on that whole, introvert extrovert thing, do you think you've been in the business a while? Do you think that the nature of developers has changed? I mean, we've talked already about stereotypes. Do you see more people kind of becoming more extroverted? The population of developers shifts and more people are encouraged into it? Or do you think perhaps now people are more introverted because of all those great books about introverts? People are actually kind of happier to fess up to the fact that, they're introverts and they're proud of it.
So one of the things that HackerNest stood for right at the start was to build these supportive, strong communities, actual communities, because there has always been a lot of negativity associated with being a nerd, right? Like so 40 years ago, if you had a parent that was an accountant, guess what you're going to be? You're going to be an accountant, right? Like that's just how it is. Now people have infinite choice. Now people can go read a blog about what it's like to be an astronaut. Now they can go learn how to code on online at any of a dozen of different online free boot camps. And because of this mammoth array of choices that are available to people choose to be developers now, right? Like they don't accidentally stumble into it. People actively seek it out because, there's been so much success. Technology has had such a massive change on the surface of this planet and on the nature of our civilization and how we interact with our daily world, right? Like most people spend more time on their phones than they do actually sitting and talking to real human beings. This sort of shift and change, I think, has allowed more people to come into the fold. I don't think it's changed the critical core developer element or technologist element of being more comfortable interacting with machines than people. I think that it's brought more people into the fold. So there's some people who say that the world is getting worse. They're like, hey, every news article I read, every news flash video is about something horrible, somebody hurting somebody else, some horrible meltdown somewhere, somebody oppressing someone else. Like, or even police brutality, right? Like, I don't think that these things have magically started happening now. I think that we've had so much more coverage because everyone's got a little device that can record everything around them. I think things are coming out to the forefront more. I think the world is getting better. I think people are learning how to be better. I just think there's a lot more exposure on the people who are already doing the bad things, getting more publicity. And yes, there's more reports of bad things happening, but I think people are learning from that. I think we're learning to denigrate that and say, hey, look, you really should not beat an unarmed person senseless for no apparent reason. And you should be shamed for doing that. So I think that change isn't really necessarily change. I think it just might be revelation. That makes sense?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, yes. And I think certainly from the news cycles, people are starting to realise that giving people the oxygen of publicity when they've done bad things is not necessarily a good thing. So obviously you talk about the bad event, but you don't name the terrorist that shot the people in New Zealand in a mosque. You don't name them, and you don't talk about
the thing is, you're never going to say, oh, hey, yeah, this police officer who let off this teenager with a warning because it wasn't that big of a crime, and, help change that teenager's life by giving them a little bit of clemency in a world where everything is against them. Where's that story? You're not going to read that. You're going to read the one about the kid who got shot. Like, this is what news covers. So
yeah, that's very.
Not that I'm cynical or bitter or anything.
Let's come back to your blog post,
Sure.
which something that I read quite recently. So it's about it's called "Reasons Not to Run Hackathons," and people listening, it's at hn.fo/hackathons. We'll put a link in the podcast description. So could you, for people that haven't read it yet and are going to listen before they rush off to read it, could you give us a summary first, please?
So for the vast majority of people who read this, I've run more hackathons than you, and run them with larger companies. And I have this experience, and I've spent more time trying to make hackathons really effective and successful and good. And I want to share my experience with people so that they understand that there's a better way of doing things, that there can be better ways of doing things. If you still want to run a hackathon after reading my article, fantastic, right? At least you'll now know the pitfalls that I've said, hey, you should watch out for these several things, because this is what happens at the vast majority of hackathons. I want people to have better experiences. So I don't denigrate hackathons in general, just a very particular slice of hackathons. There are all kinds of wonderful, useful, absolutely beneficial hackathons. Internal company hackathons. I mean, Facebook, I think they still do this, but they run a hackathon every single week. And, things like the like button emerged out of a hackathon, and that's great, because the people who are working on that hackathon have something to do with the product. When you have a public innovation hackathon, when you're, say, a company like, let's arbitrarily pick something. Actually, I kind of don't want to name corporate names here. So if you're a company and you're like, oh, wow, we work in construction, we should have a hackathon because, everyone loves technology. Well, and we can get fresh new ideas from a bunch of nerds. We just need to throw pizza and beer at them and they'll be happy, and then they'll come up with like a time travel cement mixer app, and it's great. That is the hackathon that I'm rallying against, where you try and get a bunch of random people who don't have a ton of experience working in any particular theme or subject that you're running the hackathon for, and saying to them, hey, solve our problems. And you've got 24 hours. And you should, do all of your code in these 24 hours. And you shouldn't sleep. You should be sleep deprived. And when you demo, you shouldn't show off the code that you've built, but instead the interface and the pretty design that you developed, and talk to us about the business logic and how you're going to monetize on that, because that's really part of hacking. When you pull all of these different factors together, you get really weak quality output, because a hackathon isn't enough time to really innovate. This is not how real innovation happens. It is hyped up by the media. Press love the story of this group of random kids who formed at a hackathon and accidentally built an amazing time travel app, right? Like, people love that story because it's cool, but it's not real. It's artificial. And so the article really helps to expose a lot of the flaws of hackathons that producers never think about, because the metric for success is I can get as many people as I can sitting in all of these chairs. I take photos of them, and then I have a successful event. It doesn't matter what the outcomes are. It doesn't matter if something actually gets developed that saves the world, because I'm not going to follow up. I don't own that company. I have no stake in it. What's the point? So when you're looking to have other people innovate for you as a company, you're setting yourself up for massive failure. From the fact that the vast majority of hackathons teams are not going to survive the weekend. They come together, they ad hoc form because it just happens that Sue, Bob, and Marley are available for this particular weekend to spend their whole weekend working on some, harebrained idea that we came up with in an hour because, well, we have to do it quickly. And the solution that we're working on is the simplest, easiest, smallest problem that we can fix elegantly, because we're not really trying to solve problems. We're trying to build something pretty enough to win a demo, to convince those judges who have no idea what they're doing, because quite frankly, unlike a VC or an investor who sits and watches dozens of demos every single day and is actually evaluating them, Unlike somebody who is doing code review on other people's products every single day, they have no calibration for being able to tell what's good and what's not, right? In any given hackathon, let's say you've got 15 demos, right? Like, we'll call it a tiny hackathon of 15 demos. And really, hackathons go up to like 100 plus demos, depending on the number of teams that you have and the size and the marketing you've pumped into it. Usually it's done one after the other. The demos will be demo, pitch, judge Q&A, demo, pitch, judge Q&A, demo, pitch, judge Q&A. These all start rolling together. And this is the first exposure judges, who often are not professional judges, have to these products, and it's an enormous amount of stuff to absorb. And so what happens after about 4 or 5 demos running one after the other is that everything starts rolling together and judges start forgetting. This is just human nature and psychology and people's brain capacity for absorbing new information in a very short amount of time. So the judging itself is fundamentally flawed, because judges don't know what they're judging. They don't know what's good and what's not. All they can do is look at the shiniest, prettiest thing and say, oh, well, chances are, because it looks so great and the team is so polished and their presenter is so charismatic, they're probably their code is probably good. Let's assume it works and give them X points, right? But the first 5 to 10 teams that you judge, you have no basis for comparison, right? Like, the score that you give that first team is based on nothing at all, because you don't know how they are relative to any of the other teams. So judging itself is fundamentally flawed. It's conducted by people who don't judge stuff, generally speaking, who don't understand all the permutations and nature of the complexity of what people are building. It's done by people who don't have, a huge incentive to stick with a project. It's a fun thing to do for a weekend. It's great to learn code. It's a great way to bond with your pals. But are you really going to quit your job? Are you going to quit school? Are you going to spend the next 6 years developing this product, managing a team, raising finances and whatnot to build the next Facebook? Really? Is that what you're going to do with your hackathon project? Probably not. I ramble a lot, so you're going to have to actually tell me to stop talking if you want me to stop talking.
Okay, I'll butt in. No, I think everything you're saying is making so much sense. It seems to me that you've got a flawed model of the attendees, you've got a flawed model of the judges. Mm-hmm. There seems to be very little right with it. And something else I'd like to raise, although I think you did cover it slightly when you said, it's Sue, Bob and Marley that happen to be available. Do you feel that there's a diversity issue as well with hackathons? Because my sense, and I'm a working mother, is that most hackathons run across the weekend, and I just personally simply cannot get away at the weekend. I have a second shift every evening, and I have childcare that I have to perform at weekends. So do you feel? And it's not just me. There's a lot of families that require one or both parents to be present at the weekend. How can you have diversity of experience? And that's just going on, my experience as a white woman. There might be people that are looking after elderly relatives because their particular cultural model means that everybody's living together and supporting one another. Or there might be people who, they may be younger than me, but they still have a family because they had kids younger. Maybe they've got 5 or 6 of them or whatever. Do you feel that there's a diversity issue with hackathons as well?
I don't. I really don't. I think the diversity of experience, sure. I don't think there's so let me clarify what I'm saying. So diversity in terms of representation from different minority groups, not really. Like, my hackathons are united colors of Benetton ads, right? Mm-hmm. And the ages of the people that participate are anywhere from like 7 at a hackathon, and they were one of the winners. It's great. To the oldest participant I've had was 72 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. We ran something called Dementia Hack with Facebook and the British government and the Canadian government. And this was a hackathon to help people who have dementia and their caregivers, right? Because this is a group of people who don't have a lot of products being built for them. Are you really, as a product marketer, as a product developer, going to physically go to a nursing home, sit with somebody who has dementia and say to them, hey, Mary, you're terrified of me because you have no idea who I am, but can you please tell me a laundry list of all the problems that you have in your daily life so I can figure out if I can monetize on one of them, please? No one's going to do that. It's awkward as hell. It's painful interacting with people with dementia because you don't know how to deal with it, and they don't know how to deal with it, and like you're trying to get something from it's a very weird experience, and it sucks, and there's not a lot of understanding around how to interact with folks who have dementia, and people will get hurt if you forget them, right? Like it sucks when somebody doesn't recognize you. There's so much awkwardness built into it, and we ran a hackathon just for this, and we ran 3 of them, and it was a great success. It was really successful. We offered daycare.
Well, this is it. This is what you need, yeah.
We offered daycare because chances are, if you really, really care about this issue, you are connected to somebody who has dementia. You have an elderly parent, you have an uncle, you have a friend who's currently suffering from all these maladies that can be addressed fairly easily by technology. But there's not a lot of stuff being built for people with dementia because no one does the market and product research on them because it's awkward. And like disposable income is attached to teens, and yuppies. Teens, tweens, and yuppies, right? Like you're building products for people with disposable income, not for people who are on fixed incomes and stuff like that. So we tried to do the most logical and practical things to make sure that the products that were developed ended up being really successful. We gave away about $80,000 worth of prizes so that we could encourage real, true companies to form after Dementia Hack, right? I think it was maybe the second one that we did. Our ability to bring and pull people together around this theme, this cause, this focus was not marred by a lack of capacity to participate, except in terms of people who were caregivers and couldn't get respite. Now, if you could find somebody to cover for you, to take care of your ailing grandmother while you came to participate in this hackathon, and this was a fantastic hackathon for diversity. We had 42% female representation at this hackathon. It was amazing when you consider that a lot of other hackathons have barely 4% of their population of participants being female, right? Like that was a huge, crazy, stunning realization factor. We had nurses. We had 6 PhD. No, was it 6? It was either 6 or 13 PhDs. It was one of those numbers. We had a ton of PhDs participating. We had doctors. We had clinicians. We had nurses. We had people who had dementia. We had so many people participating in Dementia Hack, helping to build and develop products to help folks. It was really quite intense. So in a word, no, there's no problem of diversity unless you don't do it right. There's a problem of diversity when you do not cater for it. There's a problem of diversity when you do not realize that there is a problem and don't do anything to accommodate and address it, right? So I sat on the couple of years back, Deputy Mayor's Innovation and Technology Council, and I was one of, and I should probably keep names out of, I was one of 46 people sitting in a room that was advising the city on what to do about technology and how to improve the stead of the city in tech and innovation. And there were 4 women there, and I was not one of these women. And I felt so disingenuous when I was the one who brought up that, putting all of this cash behind extracurricular programs in university to encourage more women participating in STEM, it's a great idea, but it's too late, right? You need to get people when they're really young. You need to go, there were a bunch of studies, probably more than a decade ago at this point, that were showing that the vast, vast majority, something like 90-ish% of the dropout of STEM-related electives of girls happened between the ages of 13 and 15. That's middle and high school, because that's when social pressure starts building up and it starts scaring people away and saying, oh, you know what? You shouldn't wear those glasses. You don't look cool. Or no one's going to like a girl who's sitting and interacting with computers. This is the shit that gets splattered on girls, right? Like this is That was a really ugly analogy. I'm sorry for making that. But this is the kind of crap that girls deal with. You ask me, hey, who makes better coders, guys or girls? I will, of course, say guys. Why? Because from this tall, guys have been told, oh, yeah, if you're smart, if you're strong, if you do well, you will be respected. Be strong. What are girls told? Look good, keep quiet,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Stupid
fine.
stuff like that. Or are they told, oh, yeah, guys like girls who are pretty and not smarter than them? Like, that is the crap that our society fosters on little girls. And you expect that sort of treatment to result in encouragement, in strength, in force of will, in a betterment, in a skill? No, of course not. They've been pushed down their entire lives, their entire worlds, right? Guys have been given every advantage, and girls have just been stomped on. And that's not cool. So if you want to change, you want to fix the diversity issue in tech, you have to go to middle school. You have to tell girls that it's okay to do this, that it's not uncool.
So as a woman in development, it's something that's of particular interest to me. And I recently wrote a short piece in our Developer State of the Nation report from one of the waves of our surveys, looking at the comparing the difference in proportions of men and women. And I think it was about 91% men, male developers, to 9% women. But then that becomes even worse when you look at seniority. So when you look at the C level, between the ages of 25 and 34, there are 3 times as many men as there are women in those roles. In terms of, once you take out the fact that there's a mismatch in the number of people answering the survey in the first place. So it's appalling that women, even if they are actually entering the field, which, as you say, there's quite a lot of reason why they're not, they're never even allowed to progress beyond a certain point in their career before either they're dropping out or they're discouraged or they're not promoted. And, at the moment, I'm not absolutely sure which one of those it is. But certainly as a senior woman developer myself, I would say that, and this is coming back to the whole point about, childcare and families and the second shift, is that it makes it very difficult to be part of the team, to be one of the guys, when you're the one that's leaving at 4:30 to do school pickup, and you're not available at weekends to do the team building where you will go ice skating. It's very difficult when you can't go to the conference and meet and greet and network because you're the one that's got to manage the school holidays or whatever. And so, your mention of daycare, I know it was daycare for, respite care for dementia, but why don't more conferences and hackathons offer care facilities, or at least give you vouchers back that you can spend on childcare of your own choosing, so that women and, well, men as well, but let's face it, it is mostly women, are able to attend these events and do what they need to do to get themselves up the career ladder without being held back by their other responsibilities?
A few things. So I can't really speak for other people because I'm not dumb and I don't really understand what drives most of their decision making in events, but it's expensive. It's not cheap, right? Events tend to have a fairly low margin of income, and being a nonprofit that doesn't make money off of the events, period, right? Like, it is a painful cost. That is one. Second is that the marketing and the people that are coming out are the people that they're actually marketing to. So I'm not trying to, if I'm running a tech event and a hackathon, I'm not looking for the 57-year-old parent who has to still take care of their teenage children or whatever, because the people I'm trying to market to are between the ages of 19 and 37, male, white, have good engineering backgrounds and disposable income, right? Like, that's the person that's going to make my sponsor, who's trying to hire these people, want to give me more money, right? In companies, technically, and I think this is North America, I'm not sure if it's Canada or the US, you can't actually ask if someone has kids as part of a factor in a job interview. Do you have children? Because, or are you planning on having children? Because I don't want to give maternity leave. I don't want you gone for 9 months in the middle of my product development cycle. They can't say that, but that's what they're thinking, right? And it's a sad fact. It's a sad reality. But we can change that. we just can't change it at this level. You can't go to a company and tell them who to hire. You can't tell them stop doing a meritocracy, stop picking the best person for the job, just because the best person for the job happens to be a guy right now because he's received encouragement his whole life and support from family, friends, society, right? Saying, no, you have to hire a woman, or you have to hire a black person or an Asian person or whatever the hell it is, that's not going to make the company better. It's just going to hurt the economy. Trying to fix it at that level won't work. You have to go young. You have to go early. You have to address and accommodate for these things and build it in as part of culture. You need to change the dialogue that you have with your little girls. Stop calling them pretty. Stop calling them cute and beautiful. Say they're strong. Say they're smart. Say they're talented. Say they're brave. Do that, right? Like, that's if I could go to 100,000 teachers and 100,000 parents and say one thing to them, that is it. That is it. Change the dialogue that you have with your children, right? Make them stronger.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. So having changed the world in that way, let's come back very specifically to hackathons and your reasons not to run hackathons. Can we talk briefly about scenarios where, you know, you can find something better? So maybe I should just sort of drop in the fact that in our recent developer marketing book, we had a chapter from Atlassian on this very subject where they were talking about, you know, just how hackathons didn't work for them. They were talking about an alternative that they found that was very useful, which was that they got developers together that were wanting to write, I think it was plugins for Confluence, or plugins for one of their products. And they said, right, instead of, you know, just getting people to hack, we're going to say, right, we'll put some experts on the floor. You can have a week. It's like a conference. You can learn from the experts, and you can all sit together and you form teams and you work, you know, you're collaborating. But at the end of the day, we want something that we can put in the store that you sell as, you know, your company, so that, you know, we get something out of it. We get something new in the store that has been, you know, created together, but you also get something from it. So it's kind of a hackathon, but at the same time, it's giving more time and it's well directed. Is that kind of where you're coming from, or what would be your advice for alternatives?
That's one step towards actual practicality. So we're actually in the process of creating something called the Practical Radical Innovation Methodology, or PRIME. I'm so proud of that acronym. You don't even understand. But the idea is that if you want skilled, quality people working on innovations that are relevant to your company, why are you only making your staff and team members mentors on these teams? Why are they not part of these teams? Why are they not building and helping the team guide them along an innovation process with their knowledge, with their understanding? When you have a mentor at a hackathon, it's a good effort. I think we were one of the first hackathons that ended up actually physically having mentors who were product and industry experts coming to advise our teams on their product development. Yet there's not a lot of exposure. How are you supposed to download 10 years of experience and expertise and knowledge and understanding into somebody who's interested in building the simplest, easiest fix in the shortest amount of time? That doesn't work. And if you have 100 teams, you can't really spend an hour with each of them explaining to any sort of useful end how to make their products good. And also, it's inefficient because you're not actually taking advantage of all of the innovation in the room. You're creating little pockets, silos of innovation that are competing against each other, that are trying to hide ideas from each other and not share them, because what if you steal my idea and you win? I will feel bad about that, so I'm going to keep quiet. If you have 300 smart people in the room, why are you only allowing 5 of them or 6 of them at a time to share ideas and work together and get smart? I think the fundamental concept of hackathons is insanely flawed. And so the Practical Radical Innovation Methodology says you should have a handful of people working on something. They should all be experts. They should all be handpicked. You shouldn't have randoms. They should be people from your company, from your organization and institution working on this, because they are at the trench level. They understand all of the things that are wrong. In any sort of mental health, elder care, or dementia-related hackathon, you will end up with somebody building a product that is a tracking device. Oh, Grandpa wanders and he gets lost. So what do? We're going to put an Apple Watch on this guy, and we're going to track him. And they leave the house, alarm goes off, family members get called, we GPS that person, and we hunt them down, we bring them back, grandpa's safe. Yes. Okay. Good thought. Everyone else in the world has had that as well. Why doesn't it work? Because when grandpa has this device on his wrist and he thinks he's in the 1960s and he doesn't know what this thing is and he's terrified, he takes a knife, he cuts off the device, he leaves. Right? Like it's there was a hackathon, I think it was Hack for Cuba or something, where people were building applications for people in Cuba, and they were building like iOS applications. And at that time, Cubans don't have iPhones. They had feature phones. They don't have smartphones. They didn't have that. But there is this hackathon in the United States that's focusing on building apps just for them. So there's not a lot of thought put into things. Like, these realizations should be blunt and blatant and obvious. But when you're so narrow-minded and focused on pleasing your sponsor, on innovation, on tooting your own freaking horn, and you don't consider the real experience of people around that you're supposed to be helping, that you're supposed to be impacting, that's where you fail. So it only makes sense to have people who are continually thinking about the people that they're meant to be supporting participating in this hackathon. You shouldn't have a high school student who's 13 or 15 or 16 or whatever the hell. How old are kids these days? You shouldn't have somebody who has no relationship and no understanding of the end user participating unless they are backed and fought and supported by people who do. If you just have a team of kids trying to build something for someone they've never interacted with, how useful is that? Put a person on the team with that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, there are so many good points that you've made. I could talk with you all day about this, but we're running out of time. So I think we'll finish there, and I'll just thank you very much, Shaharris. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And thank you to the listener. Thank you for listening to Under the Hood of Developer Marketing, a podcast devoted to developer marketing and relations, and also saving the world, I think. If you want to listen to other episodes, you can subscribe at developermarketingpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter at /DataHQ for regular updates. And don't forget to check out the Developer Economics Survey to win some amazing prizes. A reminder that you can find a link in the description for this podcast for you to find the survey, or you can visit survey.developereconomics.com. And Shaharris, I look forward very much to hearing more about the practical, radical innovation methodology, Prime. It's amazing, and I do hope our listeners will check out your website, which is, I believe, HackerNest.com.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for putting up with my profanity and long, rambly stories.
Not at all. In fact, I'm sure we're going to use one of those as a call out to promote the episode.
Fantastic.